Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Mercury, turning retrograde in the zodiac sign of Virgo. But before I do, did you know that you can connect with me every week on Astrology Hub's Inner Circle? Go to astrologyhub.com/more Christopher. That's astrologyhub.com/more Christopher to gain access to exclusive episodes every week. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Mercury turning retrograde in the zodiac sign of Virgo on August 5th.
Hey there, it's Amanda here, and I'll make this super quick so you can get right back to Christopher. But I'd like to offer you a free gift to accompany this episode. Now, you probably already know this, but Mercury is not the only planet that goes retrograde. All planets have a retrograde period, and that retrograde period carries a specific signature. To help you learn more about planetary retrogrades, we created a free downloadable PDF. All you have to do is go to astrologyhub.com/retrogrades to get your free copy now, or we'll drop the link to that in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
Mercury retrograde happens to be one of astrology's most famous aspects. You know how people will go and ask you about your sun sign or maybe what your rising sign or moon sign is? Well, the question right after that is, hey, do you know if Mercury's retrograde? Somehow, Mercury retrograde seems to have become commonplace in the popular vernacular. And what this refers to is the period of time when Mercury is traveling backwards in the sky. When Mercury is retrograde, it acts in the opposite way to the way that it normally behaves. For instance, if Mercury is all about buying and selling and deals and purchases going off smoothly, that period of time when Mercury is traveling backwards in the sky is bound to be rife with all sorts of misunderstandings, misconceptions, and kerfuffles. So this period of time when Mercury will be turning retrograde will be from August 5th until August 28th. You can sort of think of it as one long opposite day. So what can we expect when Mercury is retrograde? Well, when we remember that the Latin root for Mercury is merc, and we also remember that merc is the root word for merchant, merchandise, and mercantile, we know that Mercury is in charge of buying and selling purchases and deals. So that the period of time when it's moving backwards in the sky, Mercury goes from being the patron saint of shopkeepers to being the patron saint of shoplifters. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to be ripped off or robbed during this period of time, but it does indicate this is a period of time when you want to closely bird dog communications, sales, messages, any sort of buying or selling, any kind of purchases that are being made. You'll want to hold on to all email confirmations, all kinds of receipts, and anything that records how a deal is unfolding between you and another party. Because if anything goes off the rails during this period of time, and there is a very strong possibility that it may, then you want to have the evidence in the form of a text message or an email or a physical receipt so that you can be able to show the person that there was indeed an agreement, that there was an expectation of a sales guarantee of a purchase, and that you are the rightful purchaser and that you have certain buyer protections. You want to have all those technical details available right away so that you don't end up in any kind of trouble or predicament. The other thing that you want to keep an eye on during this period of time that Mercury is retrograde, which is August 5th to August 28th, is you might suddenly find yourself involved in a predicament or situation that you don't know what to do with. Things didn't come together as planned. Things didn't come together as expected. And so you're going to have to find a way to backtrack out of it without being caught or snapped up in the jaws of some kind of fiasco. But there's something else that's special about this particular Mercury retrograde. What's going on with this particular retrograde is that it will be turning retrograde in the zodiac sign of Virgo. It will be traveling backwards in the sky, traveling backwards through the zodiac, and it will re-enter the zodiac sign of Leo, the sign that comes right before Virgo. And when it does this, that means that anything that was decided upon, anything that was agreed upon when Mercury was in Leo, and those dates are July 2nd to July 25th, anything that you agreed upon, anything that was ready to go, could be delayed, questioned, or unexpectedly rendered null and void. Now, this might sound like a horrible thing, okay? And that's usually what people respond to when they hear that Mercury is retrograde. They're like, "Oh, Mercury's retrograde. I didn't get this message. I didn't get this text. Things fell together last minute. What am I going to do? This is a disaster." Okay, that's usually people's first responses to a Mercury retrograde. But Mercury retrograde also gives you a hidden opportunity if you know how to look for it. Mercury retrograde, because it's moving backwards in the sky, allows you to reapply. It allows you to put in another request or even ask for a do-over. Because Mercury is moving backwards in the sky, it gives you a second chance, another chance to do right, to do better than what you were doing before. Now, we have a famous example of a do-over that took place a little while ago, and it happened when Barack Obama was being sworn into office on January 21st, 2009. As Barack Obama was being sworn into the office of the presidency, Justice John Roberts flubbed the lines of the oath of office. They just came out wrong. And everyone froze at that moment, and they sort of like looked around at one another and they were like, do we proceed, or what exactly do we do here? Obviously, Justice Roberts was very embarrassed, and everyone sort of got together and conferred very quickly. And they decided that out of an abundance of caution, that Obama should take the oath of office again. And that's exactly what he did. And as you might imagine, on January 21st, 2009, Mercury was retrograde. I share this story with you to share with you an example about how Mercury retrograde can also be a do-over, a chance to do things a second time over again in order to get it right. But that won't be the only thing that is repeating during this time that Mercury is retrograde. Another thing to watch out for is that Mercury will be repeating its recent square to Uranus, the planet of revolution and change. Uranus, the planet of anything unexpected can happen, anything out of left field can throw you off course, or watch out for that curveball that you really didn't see coming. On August 14th, Mercury will retrograde out of Virgo into Leo, as I said. But on August 18th, it will square Uranus in Taurus for the second time. The last time, let's say the first time that Mercury squared Uranus in Taurus was on July 21st. So as a result of this retrograde, it will be repeating its square to Uranus. It will be repeating its square to Uranus on August 18th. For those of you who might not remember that date, July 21st, when Mercury formed its first square to Uranus in Taurus, that square took place on the day when President Biden announced that he was exiting the presidential race, that he wasn't going to run for a second term in office. And that certainly caught a lot of people by surprise. That was certainly something that was very unexpected. And 2 days before President Biden announced that he wasn't going to run for office a second time, you might recall that we had the CrowdStrike fiasco, where the uploading of security software caused a worldwide outage that grounded planes, cut off access to banking systems, and disrupted major healthcare networks. when you remember that Mercury is in charge of technology, it's in charge of communications, messaging, the smooth running of your day-to-day life, that it rules over things like records and networks and files and accessibility to funds. Well, you might get a sort of idea of what lies ahead. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen again. What I want to underscore here is revisiting a situation that you had to deal with the first time. So perhaps, just as an example, what this August 18th second Mercury-Uranus square might represent, this might be maybe a time when people whose flights were canceled or delayed during that CrowdStrike fiasco, this might be a time when they are reimbursed for all their trouble, when they're reimbursed for a flight or having grabbed a hotel or food that was spent as they had to wait for systems to come back online again. So what you'll want to keep in mind are the events that happened around July 21st, and you want to see if anything that happens on August 18th is some sort of response or even remedy to it. But we're still not done. Remember how I told you how special this Mercury retrograde was, how special and unique it is? That's because this Mercury retrograde is associated with a triple Mercury-Uranus square. To review, we had the original Mercury-Uranus square that took place in July. So think of it as a car moving past a piece of land, a patch of road. Okay, the car stops. Maybe it's not sure if this is the right turnoff that it took. And so the driver puts the car into reverse, and the car in reverse goes back over this patch of road. That would be the second Mercury-Uranus square that I told you about. Maybe the driver realizes, hey, I was on the right road all along. Okay, I'm going to put this car into drive. So the driver puts the car into drive, which basically lines up with Mercury coming out of retrograde on August 28th. They put the car into drive and they drive over that patch of road a third time, and then they are merrily along their way. So this is the third Mercury-Uranus square that I want to note for you. And this third Mercury-Uranus square will be taking place on September 7th. This is the third and final square between Mercury and Uranus. And this is when a matter is concluded, or when you see for yourself where things finally stand. Now, what I would like to do is talk about what this triple Mercury-Uranus square is going to mean for every one of the 12 zodiac signs. If you're born under Aries, then this could signal a change of heart in matters of the heart. Mercury retrograde on August 5th shows that you've made peace with a decision regarding a lover, a loved one, or a creative venture. This will be called into question on August 18th, which corresponds with that second Mercury-Uranus square that I was talking about. It will be called in question because maybe this person wants you back. They want to try again. They want to patch things up. Or maybe you had made a sales pitch of an endeavor or a project to someone and that you had gotten turned down. And now this person has you back on the phone again and is interested in having another discussion about what this endeavor would be. What follows between August 18th and September 7th is a lot of back and forth, where you're trying to find a fit, where you're trying to see if this is going to work out, if a second time with this relationship is going to work, or whether you're really seeing eye to eye on this project. And so on September 7th, when there is the concluding Mercury-Uranus square, the third Mercury-Uranus square, you're going to see for yourself if it was worthwhile, getting back together or trying again, or if perhaps things were better off the way that you had originally left them on August 5th. For people born under Taurus, it looks like you'll be very happy with the way things turned out regarding a recent disagreement. Yeah, you and a certain someone had your differences, but now they've been worked out and everything is back to normal, and you're very at peace with that. You're very, very happy, very, very content with that. Well, when Mercury turns retrograde on August 5th, you're going to discover for yourself that a loved one or the other person who was part of this disagreement isn't happy with the way that things turned out. That what you thought was settled, they don't really regard as settled, and they want a do-over. They want another talk. They want to revisit this decision that you and they made, and they want to discuss it further. Obviously, that's going to lead to tensions building, and tensions will peak on August 18th when there is that second square between Mercury and Uranus. This is when people will say, well, actually, I'm going to say the things that I didn't say before. I'm going to disclose to you information that you didn't know about. Or maybe they might even say to you, honestly, I felt railroaded by you into saying that things were okay when they weren't. And now this is what I really think about it. So there's going to be a mounting tension, but then this is going to be a reveal. This is going to be when the other party says what they were dissatisfied with. And your reaction may not be a very positive one. You might be like, well, what? The whole thing was wrong? Why didn't you say anything before? Why didn't you speak up? And you might maybe even wind up hurting their feelings again. And so what follows is this back and forth where you try to see if you can somehow salvage the situation. On September 7th, during the third and final square between Mercury and Uranus, you're going to discover for yourself whether it's even tenable. You know that as a Taurus, you can be fixed. You can be a bit stubborn. You can be a bit set in your ways. But at the same time, you're not going to be happy if you're being forced into an accommodating situation. You're not going to be happy if there's this feeling that this person might reverse their position again. You want something in return, like a pledge or a promise or a guarantee that this is not going to happen again, that the person is truly happy with what the result is. And you will get it, but it might be a little while before you do. So even though things are kind of conclusive, but maybe not conclusive on September 7th, if you back off and let things be, things will certainly settle down between you and this person, and you will both come to a happy conclusion, a happy bridge that will span over what your original differences were. For people born under the zodiac sign of Gemini, this Mercury retrograde on August 5th is going to be associated with a serious bout of second thoughts. No sooner do you finalize a matter, this could be a purchase, a sale, a negotiation, a deal, an agreement. No sooner do you finalize it, no sooner than the deal is in the bag, then you start to wonder if you got everything you could have. Like, did you settle for less? Mercury retrograde on August 5th is not only associated to second thoughts, but it's also going to be associated to you putting out feelers. Is there any way that you could reopen the terms of the deal? Is there any way that you could revisit the negotiation before things are truly settled? Now, this putting out feelers will start out conversationally at first, and the other party may be even open to it in terms of, well, maybe if it's a little thing or a little adjustment, but you could sort of wind up pushing for a little bit more, and this person could suddenly stop and begin retreating. If this happens, then you can see how tensions might peak with the second Mercury-Uranus square taking place on August 18th. And this may be when the person who you've sort of been coaxing to maybe revisit this agreement, this deal, this purchase, suddenly puts on the brakes and they're not having anything to do with it. Now, being a Gemini, you rarely settle for responses like that. especially when you may know someone who could act as a go-between between you and this person. Maybe it's a mutual friend, it's a mutual acquaintance, maybe it's an in-law. In any case, with Mercury back in Leo, in a zodiac sign that sextiles your own sign, Gemini, this is going to put at your disposal a friend of a friend or a mutual acquaintance who can definitely help out. What follows will be a back and forth where you will try to see if you can get what you want. Now, the final Mercury-Uranus square on September 7th shows the final outcome. It looks like you've gone too far to return to the original agreement. So there is the risk of things being called off, but Geminis are very resourceful. Geminis are very spontaneous, and Geminis can be very persuasive. So if you are successful in landing the new terms, in getting a little bit more than you got before, then what you want to do is show your gratitude. You want to have some sort of conciliatory gesture in mind. Maybe you want to share a perk with the person who yielded to you on this kind of an agreement. You definitely want to show your gratitude and your appreciation. Make some sort of gesture, and you will certainly smooth over any ruffled feathers. If you were born under the zodiac sign of Cancer, well, you may suffer some serious buyer's remorse when Mercury turns retrograde in Virgo on August 5th. Now, the reason for this is that you may have recently purchased something and then realize that you can't really afford it, or that you put a tremendous strain on your own finances, that this has thrown your budget off balance. Now, being a Cancer, you can be very economic and you can definitely stretch a dollar. But at the same time, being a Cancer, you really do like the nice things. And this split, this ambivalence of like, well, do I take it back? But I really like it. This is something that's going to cause a back and forth with you. Maybe, for instance, you do take it back immediately when you're feeling this buyer's remorse, but then the remorse of the remorse, the regret that you returned it, starts to build more and more. Maybe you go and try to find a substitute item. Maybe you go and try to find what might be a cheaper price, but it still isn't sitting nicely with you. You really wanted what you took back, or maybe you haven't yet taken it back and you still want it. So there's tremendous angst. There's tremendous self-conflict about what you're going to do. And this, of course, is going to peak on the second Mercury-Uranus square that will be taking place on August 18th. Now, this is probably when you're going to do something very impulsive. All right, this is, you take it back, you're not going to think about it, or you decide to keep it and you're going to figure out a way that things are going to work financially. And so it's going to be a very impulsive, very strong, very rash emotional decision. But again, it's not going to sit right with you. You have to remember your ruling planet is the moon, and the moon is constantly changing its appearance in the sky as it goes through its different phases. And you are indeed going through your own personal different phases about what you want to do. So what follows between August 18th and September 7th will be this back and forth, this emotional turmoil, so that when you finally reach September 7th, you're ready for conclusive action. You're going to see if this is even doable. And this is when you decide either, okay, I'm going to go back and repurchase what I returned, or okay, I'm just going to suck it up. And, even if this puts me back a lot of money, or this is going to be very sort of difficult situation for me, I want this, so that on that final square, you finally make the decision. And what's nice about this is that between this last square and Mercury re-entering the zodiac sign of Virgo, when Mercury re-enters the zodiac sign of Virgo, this will set up a sextile energy. And this is when you will make peace finally with the decision that you have made. So it will go from something that you have decided to live with, and pay the price, to something that actually makes you feel very happy, and very content. And it will no longer be this thorn in your side. So how is this triple Mercury-Uranus square going to affect people born under the zodiac sign of Leo? Well, we've all been guilty of saying things are okay when they're not. And that's exactly what's going to happen when Mercury turns retrograde on August 5th. Now, recently, it looks like there was an elevation in your status at work. Maybe you got a promotion. Maybe your job title was changed for the better. You were elevated in some sort of way, and this is a wonderful thing. You're getting more recognition. You're taking on more responsibilities. But taking on more responsibilities, taking over for someone who's no longer there, this should be associated with a pay increase, right? It should be associated with some kind of a raise. And that might be what's lacking with this Mercury turning retrograde on August 5th. In other words, you might have had an assumption that there was going to be a follow-up conversation, and it doesn't look like a follow-up conversation is going to happen. So here you are, you're taking on these additional responsibilities. You have a change in title at your job. You've been elevated in your position, but you're not getting the things that should come along with it. And maybe you're dropping hints. Maybe you're asking, hey, can I talk to a supervisor or a boss? And maybe their response to you is very non-committal. It's like, oh yeah, call my secretary, or maybe in a few days, or can we talk after we get through this project? It's showing a willingness to talk, but there's not a committed deadline. There's not a set date or an appointment. And you might start getting the feeling that you're being put off, or that you're being made to wait in some way. And you may even be questioning whether you trust this person to have noticed that there's something missing, like a pay increase, or that you may have begun to lose faith that this person is really looking out after you. And so this may increase around the time of August 18th. And it will be an interesting bit of a dilemma for you. Leos usually express very upfront about their dissatisfaction, but it doesn't look like you're going to be expressing that. It's going to look like you're wrangling with these feelings, and you're probably feeling a bit insecure about having to bring this up. So what happens after August 18th, when there's that second square, is that you may realize that you are really fuming about this, that you are really angry about this, and that you're trying to make peace with this. And maybe you're confiding in coworkers or friends, and they're saying, no, you shouldn't make peace with this. You should bring this up. This person owes it to you. And again, you may be feeling like an anxiety about bringing this up. So that when we reach the final Mercury-Uranus square on September 7th, you will bring this up to the person in charge. Or if you've already brought it up to the person in charge, this is when you hear back from them about it. And what's going to happen here is that if you haven't brought it up with the person in charge before, that the conversation will be surprisingly agreeable. And if they get back to you, it will be surprisingly typical, like, yes, of course, and here's your pay raise, or this is the fee that we've decided on. And so it will be a tremendous relief. A relief that will be reinforced by Mercury entering the zodiac sign of Virgo on September 9th. And the matter, the day that you should start to see more finances, or where this will be finalized, will be when Mercury trines Uranus in Taurus on September 24th. If you're born under the zodiac sign of Virgo, You're going to have a challenging time with Mercury, your own planetary ruler, turning retrograde and traveling backwards in your own zodiac sign. There's going to be a concern when Mercury turns retrograde on August 5th that you're being dragged back into a situation that you just freed yourself from. This could pertain to a relationship, a job, or an obligation where you felt like you were being exploited. It took you a long time to summon up the courage to leave the situation, but now you hear news from the other party that you're needed in a way that only you can help out. Now, is your decision to return to this situation self-sabotaging? Friends seem to think so. But then again, they don't really know what it's like to be in your shoes vis-a-vis this matter. It looks like you're going to respond. And this may be something that you come to regret during the time that Mercury forms its second square to Uranus on August 18th. You may see, I don't know, the same family pattern emerging, the same demands being made, the same lack of recognition or lack of appreciation shown to you for going the extra distance. You may see that now that you've responded to the call to help out in the way that only you can, that the person is not taking direction from you, that they're not following your guidance, that they're not adhering to your advice. Obviously, this is going to cause some friction, but it's important during this period of time that you maintain your boundaries. After all, you made the decision to return to the situation, so you're going to see it out. Virgo, whenever there's a call for help, can't help but respond to it. But if you maintain your boundaries and don't give yourself a hard time for having responded to someone in their time of need, you're going to discover something really valuable, that you can return to a situation, maintain your boundaries, and that you can be of help at the same time. These might sound like contradictory ideas, but by holding these contradictory ideas, I've gone back to help. I'm going to maintain my boundaries. And if this person takes my advice or not, that's up to them. If you can hold together in your mind these three very separate and, as I said, contradictory ideas, you will actually find this experience to be tremendously liberating. On September 7th, which coincides with the third Mercury-Uranus square, you will fulfill whatever it is that you were asked to do. This leaves you free to go your own way again, and you may very well decide to do that, okay? You fulfilled the obligation, it's over, and now you're free to go on your way. However, if you do decide to keep this person in your life, you will do it having learned how to do this without losing yourself in the process. Libra. You've been desperate for some time away where you can think straight. Things have been so hectic and so busy lately. Well, that's not going to happen. Mercury turning retrograde on August 5th means that there will be calls out for all hands on deck. In other words, whatever time you were promised to be away, to relax, to take time for yourself to restore your batteries, that's out the window. It's an all hands call on deck, and you will be expected to return to whatever life situation you had just gotten some time away from. Now, it looks like a certain deal, a project, or a truce has come undone, and you will be expected to fix it. On August 18th, you'll see if that solution is going to work or not. Chances are it's not going to, for the simple fact that this is the second square between Mercury and Uranus. So this is the reveal of the thing that you didn't know about before. But don't be so quick to assume the burden of responsibility here. What I said about that reveal of something that you didn't know before, this is something that's definitely going to come to the fore on August 18th. This is when you discover that there was something that someone wasn't telling you. Maybe there's a behind the scenes player who's been giving them a hard time. Or maybe the party that you're talking to, the reason that they're not so quick to agree to this solution is that they're covering up for a mistake. And they may be covering up for a mistake by blaming you. So this second Mercury-Uranus square is going to be a bit of a reveal. It's going to be a bit of an exposure of information that you didn't have at your disposal before. And this is going to make you want to question how trustworthy the people on the opposite side of the table are. In any case, you may have to walk away from the table to show that you mean business. This won't be a popular decision. It won't be an easy one, but it may be a strategic one. This not being available for comment or negotiation on your part, this is going to cause a great deal of tension, but it may very well be the thing that makes the people that you're negotiating with talk to you again, this time by showing all of their cards, this time by putting all of their cards on the table. So that on September 7th, when we have the third and final Mercury-Uranus square, you will come to some kind of an agreement where things look like they will be back on. However, you may find yourself in yet another awkward position. You may find yourself in the awkward position of having to help out the people who weren't explicit with you to begin with, who weren't trustworthy with you in the first place. You may find yourself in the awkward position of having to help them save face in order for this truce, this deal, this agreement to go through. However, you may find yourself forced by the circumstances of this situation to take responsibility for mistakes you didn't make, to take responsibility for mistakes they made. And again, you're doing this in order to save face. Go ahead and do it. You're a Libra, and you will do anything to make an agreement or a pledge or a truce work. You were born under the peacekeeping sign of the Zodiac. Go ahead and do it in the spirit of cooperation, in the spirit of making a negotiation or a truce work, and you will be more than happy with the result. If you're born under the zodiac sign of Scorpio, you'll find yourself in a bit of a sticky wicket, as they say, on August 5th. So, do you say something about the mistake that you uncovered, a mistake that was made by somebody else? Or do you just leave things alone and hope that nobody notices? Well, you were born under Scorpio, which means that you are going to have to point out this mistake. The reason you're going to have to point out this mistake is that it's more than just a minor technicality. It's more than just a simple little blunder. It could mean having to rework an agreement or a deal altogether, maybe even starting over from scratch. Now, this isn't going to go over well with the other people who are involved. The reason is because this deal, this agreement, was really hard to come by. Okay, a lot of facts were crunched, a lot of midnight candles were burned, a lot of extra effort was made to make sure that everything was all right. There will be people who will say to you, but all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed. Nevertheless, there is this telling mistake that could make the whole thing fall apart if it were uncovered. And that's the argument you have to make. On August 18th, when we have the second Mercury-Uranus square, you will have to come forward with information that you were told to keep under wraps. This could make you persona non grata with a lot of people, but your thinking is that it's better than keeping things quiet. And as you might guess, this may imperil said agreement and deal, and maybe even perhaps risk it being rendered null and void. What follows between August 18th and September 7th will be a back and forth, where you try to come up with a new version of what the deal is, or where you may even have to scrap the whole thing altogether and begin again from scratch. On September 7th, which coincides with the third and final Mercury-Uranus square, you will see whether things are going to come together or not. Chances are they will, given that Mercury will be re-entering the zodiac sign of Virgo on September 9th. Virgo naturally sextiles Scorpio, so this is favorable. This is a good thing. What it also does, this Mercury energy, is that it changes the square energy to a trine energy with Uranus that will be occurring on September 24th. So it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, but it looks like you will be rewarded for your efforts in the end. People born under the zodiac sign of Sagittarius will find themselves confronting quite the predicament when Mercury turns retrograde on August 5th. Is someone really going to take back a prize that you earned, a reward, or a promotion? It kind of looks that way when Mercury turns retrograde in Virgo on August 5th. This might be the result of a challenge, an overlooked technicality, or a boss or a client being unable to make good on a promise that they made you. Whatever the situation, it looks awkward for everyone involved. And it also looks like you're not going to tolerate it. Now, this is interesting because Sagittarians don't usually make a fuss about this sort of thing. Sagittarius is a mutable sign. Oh, you might be angry about it at first, but usually you're kind of good-humored in your reaction, and you will say something like, well, it didn't work out this time, so I'll wait my turn until next time when I know that things will work out for me in the end. Sagittarians are usually pretty amiable and to some degree accommodating. But that's not going to happen this time. And that's because of the buildup of the Mercury-Uranus square energy. You know that you deserve that prize. You know that you deserve that reward. And you know that you deserve that promotion or acknowledgement. And you are not going to settle for anything less. You worked hard for it, and you're going to be saying so when Mercury in Leo forms a square to Uranus and Taurus on August 18th. This will create quite the brouhaha with the powers that be when they retreat to decide what to do about you. By the way, you won't be the only one believing in your being right. There will be others who will be taking up your cause. It may be coworkers, it may be friends of these powers that be. You being denied this is certainly outrageous and uncalled for, and they will all be supporting you in your cause. And you can certainly stand strong in that, because you will have people who are taking your side. They will be watching your back. This is why it will produce a favorable judgment on September 7th, when we have the final and conclusive Mercury-Uranus square. It will be favorable. Now, if it's not in your favor, and there is an outside possibility of that, then there will be some other worthwhile compromise or compensation that you will find satisfactory. So whatever the outcome of all of this, it will certainly be something that you will be satisfied with, and it will be something that you can live with. For people born under Capricorn, the Mercury retrograde on August 5th will manifest as a not-so-fast retrograde. No sooner are you ready to sign, no sooner are you ready to shake hands on an agreement or an important matter, than the contract or agreement will be whisked away. It looks like not everyone was on board with giving you their approval, with showing their consent, and that a heretofore unknown third party is putting the brakes on any further advancement. So, what's up with what's going on? Well, it might be a supervisor who has it out for you, a member of the co-op board who voted against you, or the mother of the person you dated who's decided that you aren't good enough for their kid. It looks like there will be a full stop on August 5th, and there will be no further notice. Now, what do you do? Do you give up hope? Do you go back the way you came? As a Capricorn, you're not going to give up this easily. But at the same time, you're going to be visited with all kinds of doubts and worries and second thoughts and anxieties. Do you stay or do you go? Do you hold out? Is this something that you shouldn't tolerate or put up with at all? Well, Capricorns are pretty good at waiting, and they don't necessarily take the first answer that they hear. And that's exactly the headspace that you will be in during this time. And you will take some comfort, some strength from that. Unfortunately, you are not in control of the situation. That supervisor who has something against you is really strong about their problem, or that member of the co-op board, or that parent of the person that you were seeing. They have to decide if they're going to change their mind vis-a-vis you, and you will be in the dark until you hear anything from them. Now, what you hear on August 18th, when we have the second Mercury-Uranus square, what you hear on August 18th will not be to your liking, but it will come with something that you can do to win favor. In other words, you're not going to like what you hear, but it also comes with an action step. This is what you can do to actually win them over to your side. Now, your first response might be, this is outrageous. This is ridiculous. Do you know what I've already done to try to make this happen? And if you've decided to do this, the August 18th, the second Mercury-Uranus square may really signal the final outrage, and that's it, and you are going to walk away. And that would be okay. But what's being asked of you, yes, it's truly outlandish and beyond pale. However, it's also an opportunity to re-engage. So this period between August 18th and September 7th is you going back and forth as to whether you really want to re-engage or not. The closer we get to September 7th, if you're still asking this question, the more likely that you're going to decide to re-engage. And it's also the more likely that things might be back on track again. Indeed, the energy signaling that things could and very well will be back on track are going to be associated with that third and final square between Uranus and Mercury on September 7th. This will be followed by Mercury re-entering Virgo on September 9th. And that may be the time when you realize, okay, you can marry what's being asked of you to being successful in your request or your venture. And you could see that things will come together. You know, you were kind of like run through the hoops. You were raked over the coals. You were really given unnecessary tasks to do. But you may also find that as a Capricorn, you kind of have a secret love for unnecessary tasks that need to be done, and that you may emerge with prize in hand sometime around September 24th. The big question for you, Aquarius, is, are you trying to make peace between people who don't want it? That's the question you'll be asking when Mercury turns retrograde on August 5th. Maybe there are two family members. Maybe they're relatives. Perhaps they're even in-laws who have been quarreling for weeks. It's hard to see them go at it like this. It's actually very painful as much as it is tedious. And as an Aquarius, it's perfectly natural that you would offer to play the role of the mediator, that you would offer to put yourself in a position where you can help two people bridge their differences and come to some sort of understanding that both of them can live with. But it's starting to look more and more like they just want to fight, that they just want to feud, and that what you're trying to do, although well-intentioned, is perhaps an exercise in futility. This will be confirmed on August 18th when we have the second Mercury-Uranus square, and when the feud escalates to a whole new level. Now, like I said, being an air sign, you want to build bridges and not burn them. But on August 18th, you may have to accept that things between these two people are just too far gone. This would be a good time for you to retreat, and this would be a good time for you to leave things be. Now, ironically, this decision of yours to retreat, this decision of yours to leave things be, may wind up making your point better than any amount of counsel or advice or guidance could have. This leaves these two people alone to decide for themselves whether they're going to mend their ways or not. So that on September 7th, when there is the final square between Mercury and Uranus, you may see these two feuding parties making a concerted effort to get along. It's funny that by you removing yourself, you created the very bridge that you were trying to build between the two of them, which is why you want to be very hush. You want to be very quiet as they start to rebuild their friendship with one another. And like a doting parent peeking in on two kids who are fighting with one another and who are now beginning to play with one another, you want to close the door on this and go on your own merry way. The stars have a message for people born under Pisces, and that is putting off for tomorrow what can be done today isn't the way to go when Mercury turns retrograde in the astrological sign of Virgo, especially when this concerns you making a decision that others are waiting for you to make. You may tell yourself that you're on the fence about a certain emotional matter, but the truth is you already made your decision, and what you're having trouble with is acting on that decision. This could concern a breakup, a dissolution of a contract, or a parting of the ways. But like most people who don't like endings to be final, it looks like you may give a relationship, a friendship, or an association another chance by getting back together on August 18th, when we have the second Uranus-Mercury square taking place. Things might click back into place for a while, but you may find like the feeling is a bit like trying to struggle back into a wet swimsuit that you just took off. You have to pull and you have to tug at it to get it up and over your legs and get it back on. And it just doesn't feel comfortable. It just doesn't feel right. And again, this would throw you into a place of ambivalence, of ambiguity, of going back and forth about whether you really want to give things a second try or not. So that on September 7th, when we have the final Mercury-Uranus square, you will see for yourself whether this is going to work out or not. If not, then it's best to move towards concluding matters as soon as possible and get about taking care of bits of unfinished business. This will allow you and the other person to make peace with one another and to move on with your lives.